Good evening. You know, you've really got to commend fan creators for sticking it to big corporations and finally giving the fans what they want. I am assuming this is what the fans want. Whether it be an ancient Flash game or a feature-length team-developed fan work, there's a chance if you keep up with gaming news in any capacity, you're at least somewhat aware of a fan game. I think we've all dabbled in the illicit before. Growing up, there was a game I loved called Super Mario Flash, being a fully fledged Super Mario game playable right on my browser. The real kicker is that the game had a level creator, something that might not be notable in a post-Mario Maker world, but being able to create and share my custom levels blew my mind as a child. It got me thinking, what if I could play this game on my Super Nintendo? I mean, obviously the sprites were taken from Super Mario All-Stars, and if it could run on my computer, why couldn't it run on my TV? I was so adamant of this idea, I sent a letter to Nintendo's Japanese office, begging for them to make it happen. A week later, the website that I played the game on was taken down. Yes, I did let the teacher know if she forgot to collect homework. I didn't have very many friends in school. I'm very lonely. Yeah, most companies aren't too happy with you taking their character and doing whatever this is with them. Especially Japanese companies, which have an infamously strict copyright culture. Most fan games exist on an honor system of being allowed to exist, as long as they don't get too close to replacing official works and don't charge any money. As long as they exist purely as passion projects rather than financial ones, they usually are allowed to exist, although some companies are more willing to allow it than others. You mean to tell me Nintendo didn't like this? Why not? In rare cases, a company will take pity upon a poor developer and allow them to sell their game in an official manner, such as Street Fighter Cross Mega Man, a favorite of the 90s gamer who never grew up. This little project was created by Xiao Zhonghui, a fan developer from Singapore who decided to combine Ultra Street Fighter 4 and Mega Man 4. The only way to make this more popular in Japan is to combine the names. The game was almost entirely developed by Hui, but after showing it off to Capcom's staff at EVO, the game received official support from the company and was later released on Capcom's official forum. This came after a string of game cancellations in the Mega Man series, with the only Mega Man content to get a release at this time feeling like a slap in the face to Mega Man fans, making Street Fighter Cross Mega Man feel like a sort of peace offering. It's clear that this was at least partially a way for the folks at Capcom to say they were really sorry for f***ing up. It's like if somebody murdered the shit out of Elvis, but to apologize they showed you this picture. I mean, I'd forgive them. Jumping into the actual game, it's exactly what it says on the tin. A Mega Man game where you go up against the cast of the Street Fighter series. The game isn't gonna blow your mind, but if you like both series, you'll certainly get a kick out of it. I specifically really enjoy seeing Dan from Street Fighter Alpha show up after completing a level as a human punching bag. Mega Man's style is so simple that it can be pretty convincingly replicated, and aside from some boss portraits looking like a charred corpse, it's pretty spot on. Personally, I think there should be a crossover between the Punch-Out games and the Street Fighter games solely because they're both games about punching people that are just a little bit racist. Team Fortress. You know that game Team Fortress 2? Yeah, there was actually a game that came before that. Team Fortress is initially a mod for Quake, and while it has the bones of what we would later see in the series, it is comparatively rough. Despite this, the mod became extremely popular and caught the eye of the then fresh studio Valve. They took the team behind Team Fortress and had them whip up a version of the mod in the Gold Source engine, the engine that the original Half-Life was created in. This led to the game Team Fortress Classic, basically the same as the Quake iteration, only now it was an official release. Well, today it's just known as TF2's younger brother. Upon its release, it was showered in praise, often being called one of the best multiplayer games up to that point. In the modern day, Classic has been outmoded by its sequel, but that doesn't mean that the original wasn't important. An oddly notable project in this mix is the Versus Imposter mod of the game Friday Night Funkin'. Look, I got all my FNF brainworms out a couple years back. Look, here's a mod I made when I was 17. I've been here for years. I've been here for it all. They put you on the no-fly list if you know what this is. One of the early era mods was Versus Imposter, bringing Among Us very crudely into the Friday Night Funkin' style. Emphasis on crude. The first edition of this mod is rough, but given the nature of early mods for FNF, it's par of the course. And much like other mods, it's had multiple releases with probably way too much work put into it. With every update, the mod continues to be more and more developed until we got the V4 release, the release that made the game official, but not to Friday Night Funkin', instead to Among Us. Inner Sloth, the developers behind Among Us, officially put their stamp of approval on the project, and while information is all over the place, it seems like Inner Sloth had at least a little input input on how the mod came out. It's clear that almost everything is done by the Versus Imposter team, but at least on some level, Innersloth was involved, even if just for consulting and putting their logo on the title screen. Playing the mod, it's instantly obvious why this is regarded so highly, taking literally every single Among Us location, in-joke, fan project, and even previous games by Innersloth and giving it the treatment. I think your love of this will depend on your tolerance of FNF and love of the source material, but damn does it reek of quality. A fun addition to this is that Versus Imposter actually absorbed a fan mod of itself, making for the extremely rare official fan game to an official fan game. This also gave the Versus Imposter team the ability to sell official plushes for the mod, which is pretty neat. Sure, other plushes exist based on popular FNF mods, but I believe this is the only one officially endorsed by the company the mod is based on, alongside this ridiculously well animated trailer. Given that Innersloth's previous works took copyright law as suggestion, it makes sense why they'd support something like this, and it's really nice to see how they've propped up their fans. While we're on the topic of Friday Night Funkin', it should be noted that Spark the Electric Jester 3's credits contain an homage to the rhythm game that was also uploaded to Newgrounds as a standalone project. In addition, the game Madness Combat Project Nexus, based on the popular Newgrounds series, also canonized the extremely popular Versus Tricky mod, making this the third mod to be officially endorsed in some form. Fourth, actually! You didn't forget about this, did ya? Back to the main topic, Black Mesa. Black Mesa is a full remake of the original Half-Life, officially endorsed by Valve, and available for purchase on their marketplace Steam. The team behind this release was Crowbar Collective, a group of fans who proved that the greatest creative motivator is in fact spite. After the less than stellar release of Half-Life Source, an in-house remake of the game at Valve's then recent Source engine, two separate groups began working on mods to prove that they could do it better before combining it to what became Crowbar Collective. The game received numerous delays, with the first playable release essentially being a demo almost 8 years after the project's start. Following the initial release, Valve approached the team with an offer to officially sell the game as long as they paid for the license to use the Source engine, which the team would gladly accept. At the same time, Crowbar Collective would change their outlook on the project, no longer just being made to prove a point. The new goal was to emulate Valve's modern design philosophy and implement that into the original game to bump it up to Valve's modern standard of quality. This led to essentially another 10 years of development, but what came out on the other side was well worth the wait. Black Mesa is a fantastic game, taking so much of what made the original Half-Life a classic, while also improving where it needs to, and sometimes where it doesn't. Graphically and artistically, this game is a treat. I love the original Half-Life, but I like it because it feels like a piece of history. Black Mesa genuinely has some of the most stunning visuals I've seen in a first-person shooter, and it was basically done on a shoestring budget. It works with the knowledge of the series going forward, but respects the game's original intent for the most part. Half-Life 2 introduced several characters that were based on the archetypes from the original game, so Black Mesa backports these characters into the roles that best suit them for the Half-Life story. It is so neat seeing such an enormous project like this get the official treatment, and it's something I truly wish we got to see more of in the industry. Wanna see the opposite of this game? The Five Nights at Freddy's Fanverse Initiative. You ever see a logo that just pisses you off? We all know Five Nights at Freddy's from bootleg mall plushes and one of the worst movies I've ever seen. The early era of the series was all but complex gameplay-wise, and was developed on a work laptop from the 90s, meaning replication of the formula was well within a smaller developer's hands. This led to an explosive fan game scene, with new projects making their way onto the internet instantly. FNAF, being a series that garnered massive public attention, created so many different internet personalities who could live solely off of playing the games, and when there was a drought in the official content, it caused them to turn to the fan games. This led to fan series like Five Nights at Candy's, Five Nights at Treasure Island, hell, even sloppy recreations of the formula like Fun Times at Homer's were making headlines. Jeez, I thought they would at least sugarcoat it. Given the vast amount of these and sheer dedication some of these fans had, series creator Scott Cawthon decided it was time to give back to the community. Well, that is one way. The Five Nights at Freddy's Fanverse Initiative, with Scott Cawthon taking some of the most popular fan creators and developers and allowing them to sell their original fan games on console, in addition to fully funding original games in these series. The Fanverse was announced in collaboration with 5 series: One Night at Flumpty's, Pop Goes, The Joy of Creation, Five Nights at Candy's, and a game unique to the Fanverse, Five Nights at Freddy's Plus. There were other considerations as well, such as, and, what? and Jollibee's. That's right, a FNAF game based on Jollibee, the chicken restaurant. It got so far along that the creator of the series teased the game before Cawthon found out that Jollibee was like a real-ass chain. I'm sure it bodes well that there was a cancelled game before the initiative was even announced. Maybe things would have gone better if Scott chose Five Nights at Wario's. I grew up alongside the Five Nights at Freddy's series and its fan community, so I recognize this police lineup of characters, and it can't be stated how much I love the idea. Supporting developers by giving them real industry credit and making their works more accessible is a good thing. It's honestly something I wish more companies would do. We're about to see the reason no company will ever do this again. The first and almost immediate release was One Night at Flumpty's 3. This was the release I was the most excited for since I was a fan of the game's creator, Jonachrome, who had previously created the Riddle School series and Undercook. These were both projects I enjoyed a ton, but his series One Night at Flumpty's was his most popular work by far. Initially conceived as a comedic comic between friends, Flumpty's released January 28th, 2015 to immediate success. Most fan games at this time were pretty much just B-side FNAF, so seeing a version of the formula with a more comedic tone really helped it to stand out from the pack. The first Flumpty's and the game's sequel were extremely popular, and while a third game was announced, it was eventually cancelled. It wasn't until the Fanverse that the third game would even be attempted again, and the game we got out of it was pretty good. It takes elements from several of the mainline FNAF games and ideas from the scrapped version of the third game, and bundles it up into a really fun arcade-style game. This was released alongside updated versions of the original two games, which had to be changed to remove copyrighted content like a reference to Five Nights at Wario. See, Scott, it's the blueprint. The three would be bundled in the One Night at Flumpty's Egg Collection, although this would never see an official release on consoles. This was because Jonachrome was outed for allegedly dating a 13-year-old and allegedly having explicit messages and photos with her. Allegedly. This led to an indefinite delay on the console releases of the Flumpty series, meaning the only official release was the free versions for PC. And unfortunately, this is probably my favorite official FNAF entry by far. Saying you like Flumpty in the modern age is like saying you like this painting. It doesn't matter how good it was, the creator ruined it for everybody. The entire Flumpty series is kind of perfect in terms of a fan game. I'm sorry, but I don't really care how interesting your mechanics or alternate take on the FNAF story is. Hell, I barely care about the main story at this point, so you're already fighting it uphill battle. Flumpty just plays it straight. Here's some bullshit, figure it out. Honestly, fitting the game into a shorter time frame allows it to pace out the difficulty more and focus on the gameplay. And the entire series, but especially Flumpty's 3, have such a compelling game loop and are ridiculously fun. It honestly puts some of the official games to shame with how well designed it is. But it was made by a pedophile, allegedly. This might be the first case of a game I've seen cancelled after being launched in a complete state. And given the multi-year gap since its initial release, it's clear that there's no plan to bring the games to console anymore. Well, hey, that's just one failure. I'm sure that the other games in the initiative are... There's another failure on screen, isn't there? Five Nights at Freddy's Plus was the only title not from a previous series in the Fanverse, being a reimagined version of the first game, dead set on poor dental hygiene. Emphasis on dead. Not to spoil the surprise, but the game was indefinitely delayed due to the main developer FNAF, real name Phil Morg, kinda being a dick on Twitter. After a string of controversies kickstarted by his dislike of Security Breach, Morg was removed from the Fanverse and all the teasers for the game were taken down. The game was also allegedly very close to completion, and while I think Phil probably deserved a slap on the wrist, I mean, if the game was close to completion, it stinks that it couldn't find its final release. Visually, it did have a neat style going on, and I think there is merit to letting the games be reinterpreted through another artist's vision. It's not particularly what I would look for in Five Nights at Freddy's, but I'm not officially associated with the series, so I'm allowed to say that. You know, FNAF actually helped out a little bit on Flumpty's 3, meaning every game in the initiative he's touched thus far has been cancelled. I'm dubbing this FNAF's Touch. It's better than the other guy's touch. Given that two of its heavy hitters are permanently off the table, the initiative's real saving grace right now is Popgo's Evergreen, created by developer Kane Carter. Popgo's is, at this point, the only thing with anything to show from the Fanverse. I mean, I guess Jonachrome had something to show, but I'm too old to see it. Now, have we gotten what we were promised from Popgo's? I don't know. Is it ethical to fuck ducks? Since the announcement of the Fanverse, we've gotten two Popgo's games, those being Popgo's Arcade and My Popgo's, with the latter basically just being a simple Tamagotchi-like pet simulator. I think I might just be burnt out on these pedantic minor games that maybe drip a single nugget of lore after 5 hours. Which, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to care about the lore of your FNAF OCs until you give me something worth more than a summary on a fan wiki. Popgo's Arcade is a much more real release. If My Popgo's is a shitty April Fool's joke, then an arcade is the Popco series FNAF world, albeit without the creator threatening suicide. Well then why the hell do I care? This actually serves as a starting point for the new Popco's continuity. The what? Sorry, I forgot to mention this earlier, but the new Popco's games made within the Fanverse are a reboot of the Popco's series, with Popco's Arcade being the first game in this rebooted universe, while also being the second game titled Popco's Arcade, because we know that's worked so well in the past. I can understand the desire to go back to older works and sprucing them up with your new philosophies, but doesn't that kind of defeat the point of the Fanverse, taking beloved fan games and making them official? I also feel like at one point you're just getting diminishing returns of the effort you're putting in. Just like FNAF World, Popco's Arcade parentheses 2022 is exceedingly simple with a story that probably doesn't justify the hype. Hell, I almost find the original arcade to be a better game despite the lower quality. There's a moment in the game where a character jumps out of the arcade frame to jump scare you, and I really enjoyed that moment. And while a similar one exists in 2022, the higher quality animation gives you too much time to anticipate what's coming and ruins the scare. That's kind of how I describe the entirety of Popco's Arcade parentheses 2022. A higher quality product to what came before, but to a detriment of the final project. Another project that's worth noting is Freddy or Not, a game developed by Cade with Scott's approval for sale on Steam, but outside the Fanverse. It's Codebreaker, but the fucking lemonade clown is there. There's nothing wrong with the game, but come on, man, this is the third project being developed by Kane that isn't the main game promised by the Fanverse. I'm not trying to imply that the developer is slacking or avoiding development on the full game, but when the game was announced 6 years ago and all you have to show is an RPG that's only fine, an April Fool's Day prank, and Biddy Bab Wordle, it doesn't paint the best picture. Five Nights at Candy's 4 and The Joy of Creation have had no releases up to this point, though much like Popco's, I don't think this is due to any sort of lack of work. All the games give fairly consistent updates, and as much as I dumped on Popco's, it and its contemporaries are minuscule dev teams. Regardless of developer intent, all we have to show so far are 3 mediocre half games, 1 cancelled game, 3 in development hell, and Jonachrome. Technically, Popco's and Candy have appeared in the second Five Nights at Freddy's movie, but like, that movie sucks dick. Is it fair to say that the Fazbear Fanverse initiative has been a failure? I don't know, is it fair to say I need to get out more? Here's the thing about platforming fan creators. It's almost always a bad idea. In fan communities, the only thing worth more than actual money is social capital. Whenever a new fandom pops up, those who can create high quality materials the soonest get a ton of social credit and a lot of eyes on them, cementing them as pillars of the community worth keeping an eye on and supporting. This incentivizes these creators to invest more into a social community rather than their art, which in turn almost always turns into controversy. An official source platforming these people always leads to a bad situation. If the original creator goes against these fan creators, they're seen as ungrateful or loathsome of their supporters, or even worse is directly supporting them, because now you've given these creators the touch of God, instantly propelling them into figureheads to be taken as gospel, even if there's been no wrongdoing. Putting a massive spotlight on someone just makes them a magnet for ridicule and criticism. When a company receives this kind of backlash, it's the entire corporate entity, but a single person getting the full force of Twitter upon them is good for nobody. No wonder so many fan creators snap and lash out. It's like being put in a reverse panopticon. It gives these internet creators the responsibility of being full developers, having to maintain that level of professionalism while also being fully immersed as a regular person and collaborator in the community. Someone who is both fully a higher authority while also being wholly human and approachable. You know, like Jesus. Basically what I'm saying is we need to crucify Jonachrome. I never want to discourage the passion of an artist. Almost every single artist started with some form of fan art. So many things wouldn't exist if they didn't take inspiration from something. There's not even anything wrong with showing your appreciation or take on an IP you enjoy. Games are just another artistic medium, and as long as artists existed, fan art has followed. But be aware of what you're making. You are inherently creating derivative art, and while it can be a good jumping off point, being tied to someone else's work without having any claim over it can be exhausting and extremely tumultuous. Fans have also gone on to make a couple things that are kind of half steps into this sort of topic, so you know what that means. It's time for the Big Deuce Lightning Round! Sonic Mania is by no means a fan game, but almost every hand that touched the project comes from the fan community in some shape or form. Atari in recent years has embraced its small but dedicated following with the Atari 2600 Plus and reprinting ancient games like they're new. Alongside their pre-existing titles, they've hired homebrew developers to create new original titles alongside licensing pre-existing homebrew titles. Castlevania The Lacard Chronicles 2 was a fan game that was given the thumbs up by Konami, a feat akin to Satan giving you a smooch. The game featured many official contributors to the series, although it is still not an official game. Undertale Yellow and Undertale Red were similarly given the go-ahead by Toby Fox, and while by no means official, many of the characters involved in this ended up working with the man himself. Halo 2600 was a remake of, you guessed it, Balls. This was created by Ed Fries, a former Bungie team member, making this the closest you could get to official without being official. I think the true ideal endpoint is just bringing fans into the ecosystem. Let them be a part of the team, but don't make the appeal that you know fans exist. So many fan developers and fan artists get brought onto projects due to their fan art. Many in the Friday Night Funkin' modding scene have gone on to work on the official game. Ian Flynn went from writing Sonic fan comics to writing the entire series. Hell, I crapped all over the Fanverse initiative, but these suits used in official marketing and events were initially created by a fan, an artist who has gone on to be their go-to guy for this sort of thing. Going official isn't the only way to make a buck off your fan work. Sometimes it's worth it just to turn your fan project original, such as a Little Big Planet fan port being turned into the game Restitched, Freedom Planet going from a Sonic fan game to an original title. Even the Stanley Parable started off as a mod of Half-Life before becoming its own project. You're no longer shackled to the original property and can truly do whatever your heart desires and allow your creativity to flow. Isn't it beautiful to just see someone succeeding doing something that they love? Once again, I really hope this was done out of love.